All right, good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Well, it's technically afternoon on the East Coast. My name is Todd Harris, Head of Marketing at Select, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by Jose Chan, VP of Business Development at Select, and by Molly Shaw, VP of Retail Solutions at Select. So hopefully everyone can see my screen here, and you are here for the UBU 3 Ways to Stand Out from Amazon webcast, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how to use your stores to your advantage. And this will be a largely free-form chat, meaning between me as the moderator and Molly and Jose, we will be just kind of bantering back and forth across a series of topics, hopefully giving you some nuggets of information to bring back to the office tomorrow or Monday, and maybe change the way you're thinking about something or give you a new idea that you didn't have before. And I would also ask that you ask questions. So chime in by using the questions panel or the chat area, I believe, is open to you. If not, use the questions panel, and that will get right to me, and I'll make sure to bring it up throughout this session. And I should note that we have a really great cross-section of retailers here today, so I'm looking forward to see how this ends up. I think a lot of our content should ring true to many of you that are here. So let's properly introduce Molly and Jose. Molly Shaw. Molly brings 30+ years of retail experience to Select, and specifically she heads up our retail solutions team, as I mentioned before. She's worked in various leadership positions in merchandising, planning, human resources, and IT. Most of her career is at Saks Fifth Avenue, and most recently at Hudson's Bay Company before Select. So it's awesome to have her here, and she'll have some great insight to provide today too. Jose Chan. Sorry, Molly. Molly's properly saying hi to everybody. Jose Chan is Vice President of Business Development at Select, and he has worked internationally in the retail industry for about over two decades. Jose, I didn't know you were that old. Holding senior management positions in buying, marketing, merchandising, and planning. In addition, Jose teaches at retailing at Parsons, the New School for Design. I think that's where you are today, right, Jose?
Yes, it is. We're here with Molly.
You are. Perfect. So let's get going here, and just actually very quickly, housekeeping. We have a few housekeeping items just to quickly go over. All lines are on mute, so if you're talking right now, we can't hear you. This is being recorded, and I will send the replay out, so feel free to forward to anyone on your team or anyone else that you think might be of interest to this. That'll be in the next couple days. And I will also put up the slides very close to the end of this up on SlideShare for you to look at afterwards. And as I mentioned, questions can be submitted through the Q&A panel at any point in time. Great, and I didn't move us forward here as I should have before, but there they are. There's Molly and Jose. So quickly before we get going, I want to just frame up who Select is, just so you're aware, so you know who's speaking here and the kind of angle that we come from here. So Select helps retailers optimize their inventories, and that'll be a theme that you'll hear today a little bit through data-driven decisions about what to buy, how much to buy, and where to put it, and also where to ship it from. What this does is it helps simplify the complexity of inventories and related to product assortment, and being able to optimize that throughout the merchandise planning process. And very often this results in revenue increases of roughly 10% for many of our customers, so it's fairly significant for them, in addition to margin increases, which is frankly more important. And our customers include known retailers like Urban Outfitters, Aldo, and Saks Fifth Avenue. So we're going to cover a few topics today. We're going to cover 3 of them actually. And the first section is going to focus a little bit on how you can look at unique and differentiated product assortments as an advantage. Hopefully this is showing okay for you. And the second, we'll hone in on your in-store experience and a little bit more about what your shoppers may want, because they do want to go to your stores, and the question is, what do you need to do to get them there, to get them over the edge to go to your stores? And all this is keeping in mind that we hear a lot about Amazon and we hear a lot about e-commerce taking over, but the reality is that online sales account for roughly 9% of all retail sales. So stores are still where it's at. And we'll close the topics covering ways you could be more agile and effective with inventory to really get that operational edge. And at the very end, what we'll do is we'll sum this all up. Each section will provide you with a takeaway, and I'll wrap it up at the end with all 3 takeaways again, so we can just reflect on those. So hey, this is we themed this webcast about Amazon a little bit, so hey, why not put in a quote from Jeff Bezos? And this was in April when he wrote his annual shareholder letter, which got lots of attention, if you recall. And it was mostly because he revealed some of Amazon's, I guess you could say, secrets, some of the way that they think, some of the way that they look at success and growth, some of their ideals and mindset. And there were several points of interest, but this one stood out because I think it's more appropriate for today's conversation. And I bold-faced the part that I think is the best, but the moral of the story is that even when your customers don't yet know it, they want something better. So they're always looking for something better. And part of the theme of some of the areas we'll speak about today is how you can do that for them, and you can think ahead of them and get ahead of the game before, I guess you could say, it's sort of too late in that case. And this moves into why we're talking about this. And I look at this, and we look at this as a retail inventory epidemic. And in the end, it may not have anything to do with Amazon itself, but Amazon is sure, making things a little bit more difficult. Store traffic decline is a big one here, I would say. I named 3 things there: overbuys, underbuys, which means overbuys, meaning you have too much of a product, a little overzealous with a buy, and underbuys not enough to meet demand. But in-store traffic is definitely the bigger topic lately, and maybe some would say that's due to a heavy decline in popularity of our traditional malls as we know it. So less people running through malls and shopping. So why don't we move over to topic 1 and get Jose and Molly going here, and we can talk through a few of the questions that we have ready to be positioned to them. But this one will cover more around, what can you do to form differentiated and unique store assortments. So I guess first off, Molly, what should retailers care about when stocking unique and different products in their stores, or why should they care about this? I should say.
So it's a good question. Customers need a reason to go shopping these days. They have a lot of choices, and their behavior is changing on how they shop. They want to get it. They're up in the middle of the night, insomnia. They want to be able to go shopping, and so they do that online. If they're around town, they want to be able to pop into a store. But it needs to be compelling for them to go into that store. The products need to tell a story. They have to really talk to the customer. So whether are their products environmentally friendly, if that's important to the customer, or do they cater to their specific lifestyle? Some just wonder on if retailers are addressing the customer's needs for more casual wear, because that's been obviously a big change in the way how people dress. So it's really about making sure that you do have those unique products to draw people in.
It seems like there's endless choices nowadays, so you kind of got to pick your battles, right?
Right. Yep.
So the next one in this world that we're in right now, this topic area is what strategies can retailers use to create these differentiated assortments? What can they actually do? Jose, you want to take this one?
Sure. So, complementing what we're following up on what Molly said, I'm going to pick up on one thing she said, which is the storytelling piece. And she said your products need to tell a story, right? And we're in the business of selling products, but ultimately a dream to end consumers. That's really what we're doing, because no one needs another item of X or another item of Y. Therefore, there are specific things that retailers can do, right? Within this whole, let's say, framed is, if we're selling a dream to a customer, what is that dream, and what is it that we're doing exactly as a retailer, right? So there's 3 things that they can do. One is that they could have exclusive product, and this applies to both multi-brand and mono-brand retail, right? And this is something that is key. If you're a multi-brand retailer, you're always going to ask, obviously, your vendors, your buyers, for a product that's special and unique, right, and something that's different. If you're a mono-brand, you might have something where you have product that you could sell from other vendors, like a J. Crew, for example, that may provide you with a different point of view, but still appeals to your consumer. So what am I saying specifically? J. Crew, as you know, would sell Timex watches. They'd sell some vintage pieces. They might sell barber coats, etc. So that's number one. Number two, this is key for all retailers, and this is something that hasn't been done because there's a sea of sameness across the board, is to experiment with new vendors, right? Because if you walk into a store today, whether it's apparel, whether it's a shoe store, forget commodities for a second, but something that you're looking to purchase, you have the same brands, and great, we just said you have to be exclusive, but you need to have some excitement with your product, because at the end of the day, no one walks into a store and wants a negative experience. They want something that is fresh and appeals to them. Thirdly, and this may not apply to all retailers on this call, is invest in private label, and it's important. Why is this important? Today we're talking about Amazon. Amazon's doing this. And if you were to Google documents about Amazon, they're building this up, and you should be too. A company that does this, well, would be Macy's. They have many private label brands, but they've created a specific one, which started in 2011, called Bar 3. And that one was designed specifically for millennials. And it speaks to them in terms of what they're doing. So that would be another way. So ultimately, have exclusive product, experiment with new vendors, and invest in private label.
So
that's great. Yeah, go ahead, Molly.
I was just going to say, that's an example of knowing who your customer is, that Macy's is creating a brand that's going to cater to those millennials and who they want to attract as customers. So that's smart.
Yeah, like it's an agile pivot there. I mean, we know that Macy's has been in a little bit of trouble lately, so it's smart of them to recognize that and take some action. So let's talk about any retailers that are actually carrying a unique and special product assortment. You kind of mentioned the Macy's thing, and that's great, and that's a great example. But there's some others here, and we'll explain the shoes here and the questionably designed shoes. I will say, and I'll leave it at that. Molly, you want to take us through this one?
Yeah, so I think one thing that works really well is when retailers collaborate with others that complement their brand. So, everybody knows that Target has been collaborating with high-end designers to sell, small capsules of product that, come in and go out and aren't available anymore. So as Jose was saying, it drives a lot of hype about it, and, a lot of those things have sold out immediately, which has been very good for Target, and they get a lot of media around that. Or designers of categories of product, they have a lot of private label that are cosmetic brands that they have a name attached to that, and I think those work well. As well as notice that these Keds, they collaborated with Rifle Paper Company on the shoe design. So they took some of their paper product, wrapping paper designs, and the first set of products sold out immediately. So they're on their second release now, which is very interesting. So I think those are some of the things that are also very successful. There's a website called The Grommet. They have very unique product that you can't really find other places. It's certainly not on Amazon. And the way they set up their website is it tells a story. And then speaking of stories, there's a store in New York City called Story. And basically, they change their products every 4 to 8 weeks. And they have very specific themes around their products. So it gives the customer a reason to go back. And it's just a new way of inventing retail. It's actually one of their taglines is they're reinventing retail, because it's the point of view of a magazine that they sell things like a store. So there's a lot of different ways that people are doing things differently out there. And I think a lot of these things can actually translate to if you're a larger retailer or a mono brand, and kind of take some of these ideas and put a little different twist on it.
So Jose, is this what makes a retailer Amazon proof? Like these concepts that we're conveying here, you know, about the store assortments and having unique products, a unique store design, a unique business model, like Story, for example. Story seems pretty Amazon proof, right?
Yeah, and I fully agree with Molly and with this statement. Is that what we've been talking about is leveraging, and a lot of retailers on this call have physical stores, right? It's something Amazon does not have, holding aside Whole Foods, which is a different business, right? So I don't think we have any grocers, but if we do, different story. However, no pun intended, if you think about what you have, it's your secret weapon. The thing that makes things special is being able to have a place to go to. So what is your store nowadays? Your store is a place where you can do many things. Not only in the past, pre-digital, it was a place where you went to transact, right? Now it is also a place where you go to see, because you need not buy in the store. And it's also a place to fulfill from. So yes, I think that these are all things that we can do, and we should very much keep this in mind. I think the key takeaway of this question is everything that we talked about makes you Amazon proof, but the key is to leverage your physical stores to differentiate yourself, not only with product, but differentiate yourself as a, let's say, retailer, which would probably be the best thing you can do for yourself relative to Amazon or any other competitor for that fact.
Yeah, and that takes us nicely into the first takeaway of, you know, considering what makes you unique, whether it's a product, a theme, a collaboration with another brand, but make it so you have something that can't be bought elsewhere, or it's harder to buy elsewhere. And find ways, you know, to see into future demand and adjust your merchandise buys around it. You know, go big on the high demand items that you see that it could be predicted, and avoid those conservative flat bets, we like to call them, across stores, which will leave you, you know, missing opportunities or being oversupplied. So really pay attention, like we said, pay attention to what your customers want, what your shoppers want. The example of Keds and Rifle Paper Company, that to me seems very difficult to pull something like that together, but clearly Keds knew that a huge part of their base you know, likes that design, or maybe they also purchased a fair amount of Rifle Paper Company supplies. Who knows? But they saw it and they found it and they capitalized on it. I don't know how long it took them, but they did something about it, and it's paying off in spades for them. So topic 2, second part of this, almost halfway through here. So shoppers want to go to your stores, give them a reason to go. And this one is going to be a lot around customer experience. We're going to pay a lot of attention to customer experience in this section. So a question to throw out here to Jose and Molly is, how would you define a positive customer experience, and what does this even mean? We hear about it all the time.
Yeah, so I actually think it means two different things. It can mean having an experience in your store. So back in the day at Saks was known for having a ski slope in their stores. Literally in the 30s, they built a ski slope. So customers could test the equipment and they could actually get lessons. So it was really popular. Skiing became very popular. And so they capitalized on that to have some sort of experience for the customer to come in. And then the other thing is having that seamless shopping experience, whether it's online or in store. So having that consistent brand messaging across all your channels, making sure that, you know, it is seamless, that when they walk into the store and they're on the app, they, you know, see somewhat the similar things, that everything's connected. And not all retailers do that today.
And I'll chime in there. I fully agree. I think Molly's spot on. If you think of the experience, it's not consistent. And I think retailers know this. They just have to work on it. And it's not a problem that can't be, let's say, that's not solvable. Because ultimately, retailers that have been around for a while are siloed. So they're not really talking. And even when, let's say, almost at this point, almost 2 years ago, when Macy's put together its e-com and brick and mortar team, it still wasn't 100%, let's say, it wasn't fully executed to its maximum potential. So you need to look out for these things when doing this. And it's not a tech problem, it is an organizational problem. And that's what leaders, like the leaders on our call this afternoon, need to take a look at. You have to make it seamless.
Agreed. So let's talk about some examples of retailers that actually do this well, and the picture on the left is a hint to one of them we'll bring up here.
Yeah, so yeah, that picture is about Perch, which you can go in, and that is a bathroom supply store where you can buy shower heads and bathtubs and those types of things.
Lots of house things, yes.
Yeah, things are, and you can try them all. And you can go in and take a shower if you want. You can take a bath. Those types of things. So that definitely gives the customers a very unique experience, and be able to try the products, because those are big ticket items. And when you get it home and you don't like it, if you haven't tried it, you feel kind of disappointed. So it allows the customers to actually try the products. Other stores that do that is Bash Pro Shops. They, let you try all their products as well. So some other things that, from a positive experience, I read recently that Walmart partnered with Teacher List to let customers shop directly from their children's teachers' supply lists. So you can go on the Walmart website, pull up your school, pull up the grade, and actually know what supplies the kids need and shop through that list, which is certainly very easy and simple, and make it very convenient, which will give them an edge on that. Saks is continuing with their legacy of doing those types of experiential. They have something called the Wellery, which is fitness classes, salon services, that type of thing that they have.
Everything tied into the store, right? That's
in the middle of their store, sure. Yep. So I think a lot of retailers are going after these types of experiential strategies.
So I mean, the experience thing is great. So, but if we were going to look at product in terms of the point of this section is to talk through, what shoppers want when they actually go to your stores, and once they're there, how do you give them what they want, right? How do you actually give them what they want? And part of this is the experience, but part of this is actually the stuff you're selling, right? I mean, it's not all going in there and taking showers and climbing rock walls and whatever else they have in there, which is fun. They want you to go and buy stuff. So how do you make sure that you're allocating what your customers actually want to the stores?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. It's fine to have the experience to get them in the door, to get the traffic there, but then once you're there, you need to make sure that you have what they want. Customers, if they're going to go to the lengths of actually getting in the car and driving to your store, you really need to make sure that you have what they want. So in that selection, making sure that you have the right sizes, the right quantities, the right color, and that goes to localized assortments. So you need to find a way to be able to allocate based on, stores or like stores, and figuring out what like stores are. It's not always about volume or weather patterns like stores. They, it's based on the customer behavior and what types of products the customers like, which is
so if you're thinking about how does a retailer actually tell if they've allocated what the customers want? And I'm thinking many of our listeners right now are probably sitting there like, yeah, no duh, you guys, it makes sense, obviously, but a good way to look at that is how many are being marked down, what's the extent of the markdowns, what's the sell-through rate, all that stuff, which there's optimizations against that you can do. But when you're looking at did you actually allocate what your customers want? Well, I mean, if you've got a lot of stuff that's sitting there going to outlets, then maybe you didn't allocate what your customers wanted, and maybe that's going to play a part in them coming back or coming back as often as you'd want them to, right?
And they need to analyze that. And it's a good point.
Yeah.
They need to analyze what sizes are left over and what colors were left over, and try not to repeat that.
Totally. So, hey, Jose, what do you think from a tech angle here? So, from a technology angle, what role does that play in this, and how do retailers go about, both on the customer experience side and that allocation side, getting that right? How do they go about this so they can increase that, that foot traffic in stores?
Good segue. Good question. Retailers need to think about technology that might be at the front end and at the back end, right? Because there are two types of technologies. And at the front end, you would think that you have things that are at the front of the store. Back end are things that customers don't see. Ultimately, these should be fused together so that this experience is cohesive across all consumer touch points. However, before diving further into it, that was just the frame, what this all starts with is with a strategic roadmap, right? It starts at the C-suite, meaning that there needs to be a plan, and this has nothing to do with tech. It's running a business 101. You need to have a plan as to what are you going to do. And you have to understand that this plan is just that, a plan. It changes over time, and there's no precise plan. So therefore, there's a little bit of iteration that comes with this. And it needs to make sense and correlate with customer expectations, right? So the key to this as well, something to take into consideration, is that whatever this plan is for your particular type of retailer, and the reason I'm saying this, and it sounds a little vague, is because there are many different types of retailers. We're talking retail, but there's a difference between a do-it-yourself retailer, mono brand that sells shoes, perhaps a department store, etc. So, but ultimately what I can say to all of these retailers that are on our call today is it needs to be fast, convenient, and personalized, because that's what the customer comes to expect, which is what we were saying, and Molly was saying in the first segment, right? You could pretty much buy from your couch, so that's part of convenience. It could be anywhere. It could be wherever you are from your mobile phone, which is key. Personalized to you, because it means something, and it has to be quick, because that's what customers today across all, let's say, demographic, let's say, cohorts expect.
Yep.
And one last point to consider is that the tech is only part of it, because you also need the human piece to play an important role. And since we're talking in this segment about experience, you can't forget the role of your sales associates, right? If you want to differentiate yourself, your sales associates are just as important, even if they are using technology in store, in order to create that positive experience, which is something that Amazon does not have today.
Good points. So this leads us to takeaway number 2 for the second section. A few things to point out here. Again, we're going to beat this one pretty well here, is you use that unique in-store experience to drive traffic and differentiate, give them a reason to go. A little point that came out of this, I think, Molly, I can't remember, it was Molly or Jose that mentioned this, is to work on creating a customer experience roadmap. So if you're working on that in-store experience, get a cross-functional team together, engage with senior leadership to make it happen, right? Planning is great, but make it happen with a cross-functional team. And in terms of allocation, to get that right product and the right amount in your store, make sure it matches with future demand and not just historical trend data that you've seen from the past. So the third topic and final topic that we'll move into here is about optimizing your inventory and how that can help you stand out. And also why bother optimizing your inventory. And there's a whole angle to that too. So let's start off here and just think about the current retail landscape and how it's shaped the way retailers think about their inventory, and let that little statistic on the left influence you as you're thinking about this. Jose?
Yes, absolutely. So, look, a part of this is that if you look at your balance sheet, I mean, one of your biggest investments is your inventory, right? And as the retail landscape is changing, you need to take control of your business. And one of the best ways to do this is through your inventory. Moreover, if you think about what's happened over the course of time, is that customer spending habits have changed, right? And here's a good quote from an article. It's not just Amazon's fault. 10 years ago, we didn't invest in cell phones, and consumer income has not changed that much. So you need to get it right and have technology to leverage all of this inventory. And as you put in one of the earlier slides, one of the issues is making sure that you're not overbuying or underbuying, right? Because ultimately, that may sound amorphous, but from a customer experience standpoint, if you don't have what the customer wants when she or he enters your physical store, then you are underbuying and you're not stocking the right goods there. On the other hand, it doesn't help you if you hit your maximum demand and you're oversupplied and over-inventoried. So this is key. In addition, the other thing is you have social media influencers that come into play, which now affect a lot of the decisions that are occurring. Not a lot, but at least that on the demand side, social media is driving a lot of the trends, if you will, that make this, let's say, inventory issue a little bit more difficult to deal with.
So that's great. So why is optimizing retail inventory so important? I mean, we've covered a few examples of how the way consumers buy, or the way the way stores are treated, and how that can change things in terms of the evolution of that. So, but why is optimizing the actual inventory so important? And I think, Jose, you mentioned before that it's a big investment. Obviously, we know that. No one wants to have boxes piled up that aren't going to turn. So, Molly, do you want to take us through a little bit about this?
Sure. Basically, you want to make more money is why you need to optimize your inventory, so you can sell more, really. But really, your inventory should be considered one inventory, and that one unit, regardless of where it is, if you have 1,000 stores and an online store and a bunch of warehouses, you need to know where your inventory is at all times, and know that you need to optimize that. So when a customer needs it, if you don't get the allocation right that we talked about in the beginning or earlier in the segment,
mm-hmm.
then you need to know where to find that piece and be able to sell it to them and get it to them fast. So that's really important to make sure that you can optimize. It'll also help that better shopping experience that we've been talking about, and meet the customer expectations of whenever, wherever, so they know that it's on the way to them, no matter where it's coming from. And they don't really care where it's coming from, just as long as they get it, and they get it quickly.
Yep, the quickly part is probably the most important thing here.
Right.
Yeah, and that brings us right to that mentality of ship from store. There's been countless articles lately about different strategies retailers are using. I don't know if it's strategies, but it's more of situations they find themselves in, I would say, because there's lots of those situations that shoppers demand now, whether it's buy online, pick up from store, buy online, return to store, which has its own issues. Ship from store is one of those that's not new, but I guess the question is, at least based on some of the articles I was reading about the effectiveness of it, is it advantageous for them to ship from store, or could it be a little bit of a money sink, meaning they may have concerns about having to pay for shipping twice, or not being clear about what exactly they should ship from store and what they shouldn't, not having a clear picture of that, and end up cannibalizing themselves in a way.
That's a really good question, Todd, right? If you think about it, there are many retailers are doing this, right? So as you pointed out, yes, it does exist, but there's a better way to do this. And is it working to their advantage? Well, kind of, because it's still in its early stages. It's in its infancy, right? Because you have order management systems that are rule-based, right? And they're not effectively utilizing their stores as they should, right? Because they could actually leverage their store fleet and use them as mini warehouses, right? And fulfill from their warehouses. Because if you think of what Amazon's doing, they don't have hold Whole Foods aside for a second, so that's separate. But they have enough distribution centers across the country and spread out that they're actually using those distribution centers as stores, even though they don't have a storefront. So retailers need to do the same, but I don't think that they're doing this efficiently right now, whereas Amazon is. And so remember, their stores give them a competitive advantage currently over Amazon, because it's not just a fulfillment center that they're going to have. As we said earlier, a store is also a place to transact from, right? Amazon doesn't have this. Yep. And the other thing a store is, it's a showroom. And especially with apparel, you need to feel, see, and touch, which is why it makes it even more important, because then it'll give you a reason to go into the store, even if you're going to buy from that retailer, hopefully, at another point in time. So
you said a word that was a bad word like 5 years ago, showroom. That was a bad word 5 years ago. When you remember when Best Buy was effectively showrooming everything and Amazon was eating their lunch, until they figured it out. Until they figured out, oh man, we need to price match. Oh boy, we better make sure we have the same selection in store as online. And oh boy, if they want to buy online and they want it now, well, let's let them pick it up from store. Or we can get it to them quicker than shipping from a warehouse in Kentucky. Let's ship it from one of the local stores nearby that may have excess inventory, or inventory that's not going to sell to our foot traffic. So yeah, and that seems to have, I look at Best Buy as one of those that really got it right early, and perhaps some of the other, whether it's big box or whether it's home goods type retailers or whatever type of retailer it is, they're looking at a similar model like that if it works for their business model.
Absolutely. And to your point, think of it in today's context for a millennial consumer, you have bonobos, right? Same concept.
Right.
But keep in mind, which this is a good point that you brought up, because keep in mind that a lot of these stores that were digital natives have had to actually go and build stores or acquire stores, which is the case with Amazon. They've had to acquire Whole Foods. Mm-hmm. And a lot of companies that were digital natives, like Untucked or Warby Parker, bonobos, started out this way, but their consumers actually demanded that they have a store. And so, as we mentioned, look, it's a showroom, it's a place to transact, and retailers on this call, it's a place to fulfill from.
Yep. Amen. So key takeaway number 3, so the third section, the final section, a couple things to think about here as we wrap up this third section is, embrace a strategy to maybe single out one metric, inventory turns, whether it's sell-through rate, margin, something like that, and try to pivot quickly into action in a way that can accelerate the pace of improvement with that, considering obviously the business model that you have. And while you're optimizing inventories, think about how you're using your stores more effectively to actually fulfill those online orders. There's a great way to do it, but the big catch here, and the catch that I think is troubling a lot of retailers right now that are going about this, is how you don't negatively impact your in-store demand. So when I walk into a Home Depot or something and I want to buy a certain model saw, but oops, they just shipped it out to an online or from an online order, maybe there wasn't a clear picture of what the predicted demand might be for that store across their products, and maybe there's another way to look at it. So don't cannibalize your in-store demand by shipping high-demand products out of your store. That's the big catch out of that, and there's ways to get around that. So let's look at the 3 takeaways across all 3 sections here. First section, drive towards product exclusivity, right? We talked about how to be unique and experimenting with new vendors, looking at white labeling, that kind of stuff. Start a cross-functional team, thinking about customer experience here to kick off a customer experience roadmap for all channels, in other words, otherwise known as omni-channel. And think about inventory optimization strategies to get you to action quickly, and think about those ways that Amazon does things well. We went going back to that quote in the beginning, thinking about how they predict what their customers want before they even know it. Same thing for retailers outside of Amazon. You can do the same thing, and there's such an advantage with those stores. It's an amazing thing. So let's see, what are we looking at time here? We're almost done, but I think we can do is answer a question. We had a question come in here. It was actually about the cross-functional team. So we talked about a cross-functional team with customer experience. The question is, who leads this team, and also who should be in it? I don't know, Molly, if you were involved in any of this in your days at Saks, but do you have any advice to that question, or any answer to that question?
Yeah, actually, I'm a big proponent for cross-functional teams. I feel like the most successful initiatives that we had cross-functional teams, and it's where you get everybody in the organization involved, basically. It's really run by the business. The business needs to lead it, but people from IT need to be involved in case there's any technology that needs to be incorporated, but marketing, human resources, where you might not actually think that human resources need to be involved, like we're talking about the customer experience. Well, you're like, well, what is human resources? But the sales associates that we talked about, you want to be able to figure out, is there an element of that? So human resources should be involved in that cross-functional team as well. So it's literally every org support and the business needs to be involved in the team to make those initiatives successful.
Yep, makes total sense. So you know what, in the interest of time, we're almost at quarter of, so we promised everybody 45 minutes at the most, and we'll keep it that way. I will say, if you have questions, you feel free to email any of us. I'm Todd@Select.com, Jose is Jose@Select.com, and guess what, Molly is Molly@Select.com. You can find us on Twitter @Select, and if you want some more information on what we do and some of the other webcasts we've done that may be a little bit more product specific, check them out. You'll probably hear similar themes on those as some of the things we mentioned here. And I do thank everyone for your time today. Hopefully some of these thoughts jogged some ideas specific to your brand or your business model. And of course, thanks to Molly and Jose for taking some time out of their day and joining us here. The slides themselves can be found on SlideShare, I'd say, in the next day. I'll try to get them up today, and that way you can take them and take another look at them and send us any questions that you have. And I'll also get out the recording shortly, too, via email. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for attending, and Jose and Molly, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.